Leaning into the pain. That's a phrase I've been using a lot with clients recently. Lean into the pain when you're doing your training, particularly your hypertrophy training. Make every rep hurt, make it count, get the most out of every rep. And that's kind of something I want to talk about today while I'm kind of talking over a lower body session. I think there's a couple of phases to every set. Let's say you're doing a moderate to high rep set, for hypertrophy, something in the 10 to 20 rep range. Now, just by definition, the first few reps are going to feel pretty easy because they always do, right? Say you're warming up and you're going to go for like a 15 rep max or something in the 15 rep range, which is going to beat what you did last time. The first 5 reps, they're going to be pretty easy. And part of what I see why people don't get the most out of their training is they're quite used to just pushing past those 5 reps as if they were nothing. So blasting it up explosively, losing tension in the rep, bringing it down fast, just really high. When guys get really hyped up and they just fire through the reps until it gets hard, and before you know it, they failed. I just think that's the wrong way to go about things. I think you've got to try and make every rep hurt. And sure, you're not close to failure on those first few reps, but you can still make those reps effective. And that's what I've been telling my clients. Lean into the pain. If it is a choice, take the harder choice. So full range of motion, shorter range of motion, go for fuller. Do you take more rest between the reps, or do you take no rest between the reps? Go with no rest. Do you try and accelerate and make it more explosive, or do you stay controlled and make every inch of the rep hurt? You make every inch of the rep hurt. These are all choices you can make in the 30 to 45 seconds that you're under tension in a set. These are all choices you can make. You have to make the right ones. Make the ones which are associated with more growth and more tension, and inevitably more pain. So choose the difficult option every time. And that's what bodybuilding training is about. Go with a difficult option. Don't take those extra rest periods in between your reps. Keep going. Lean into the pain. Don't cut your range short. Lean into the pain. Keep going when you can. These are all things which I've been trying to emphasize to my clients when it comes to form. Because the bottom line is you've just got to carry on doing what's difficult. That's really where it's at. So here you see this rep here, almost failed, came to a standstill, finished. And that's enough. 2 more sets after this and more quadrant to go. So decent proximity to failure. But the point is I was able to get to that because I was staying disciplined right through the initial reps and ensuring that I stayed with what was difficult. So yeah, it's you can break it down any number of ways. I've tried to break it down recently with videos like the intraset rest period video, which was really popular. But that's certainly one way. And also this whole idea of rep drop-offs. Like if you're not seeing a marked reduction in repetitions from set to set, you're probably not working hard enough. So these are all ways and means I can tell whether someone is or not. But really for you guys who are listening and following along, you've got to take that attitude into every single training session. You've got to make sure you're getting the most stimulation out of every rep. And you want to work that alongside the progressive overload. Like, yeah, sure, progressive overload is important. We still want to get stronger over time, and we will, as long as we have our ducks in a row. But it's not more important than getting the most out of your set. And as I said to one of the viewers recently, you should be able to do both at once. You should be able to have a focus on what is difficult and what is the most stimulus you can obtain from a set. Also, keep one eye on progressive overload and making sure you're getting stronger over time. So you'll see with my training, I do a lot of high repetition work. Pretty much all my leg training is in the 10 to 20 range. I'll utilize a lot of drop sets, a lot of cluster sets, all to make sure the muscle is under maximum pain. And yeah, I still have an eye on progressive overload, sure I do. But you can do a lot within that. Like, for example, an easy strategy is to make sure you've got just one movement per body part, which is going to go for straight sets. Make sure you're applying your progressive overload there, and then ensure you're you're still pushing as hard as you can on those sets. You're still trying to get the most out of every rep, but that's kind of like your mark of a progression. Is something I've talked about for the last year. And then you have a little bit more leeway when it comes to things like drop sets and myo reps. I still think you should be able to progress the drop sets and the myo reps. And I think the key with progressing the drop sets is to make sure you're noting down what you're doing for the first set of a pair of working sets for drop sets, and just ensure you keep improving. Keep things simple. Same with the myo reps. Generally, all I really do is get people to mark down the first initial set. And as long as you're improving on that, it doesn't really matter what the clusters do. The clusters will fall as they may. But if your first initial activation set is going up, then you're on to a winner. Keep your progression, the way you mark down your progression, keep that really simple and focus a lot on making sure every rep is as difficult as possible. Lean into the pain. That's the main message I've been giving. And I think if you can do that, the discussions about train to failure or not train to failure become a lot clearer. It's a lot less about whether you should train to failure or not, because you can fail and you can work not very hard at all. Like, you'll get some people who are admittedly 1 RIR and RPE9 who work harder than people who fail on lifts, because the effort isn't there. They're failing for all the wrong reasons. They're failing for the psychological reasons. So oftentimes the whole idea about train to failure doesn't really tell us a lot. This is why recently on my channel I've been trying to break it down, because there is way too many people out there who say, yeah, I'm trained to failure, and I just don't see it in the gyms that I train at. So I think it's important to have these honest conversations, because there is so much ego attached to bodybuilding. It's important to really break down, okay, what do we mean by training hard? Because if I was to work with you, I can show you, I can tell you, I can direct you. And I think some of the tenets that I've been looking at recently are things like intraset rest periods. That is, don't extend the rest between every rep so you can get more. Don't do that. You're making life easy for yourself. Just carry on pushing. Don't take a break mid-set. Lean into the pain. Other things are things like range of motion. Don't cut the range of motion. Yes, the bottom position of a squat is hard. That's why we do it. If there's no other good reason for you to go down to the bottom of a squat, then just making sure it actually gives you more of a stimulus and it's more painful, then do that. You know, typically higher repetitions generally tend to work better. It's difficult. So we've got all these things that I've been talking about recently, which are markers for how we know you're working hard enough. And another one to end with is rep drop-offs. If you're getting 10, 10, 10 on your sets with the same weight, I'm sorry, first two sets were way too easy. You should have a noticeable drop-off in performance. If you don't, you've clearly not actually stimulated the muscle or generated any kind of fatigue. So I think what I've wanted to do with my channel over the course of the last couple of months is really talk about what it means to work hard. What does that actually look like on a regular basis? Because I think it's very much a throwaway comment. Like, everyone talks about training hard. What does it actually mean? Because clearly there's a disconnect there. And I think it's important for you guys to see me train, as in what I'm currently doing, and see that. Like, what does that look like? What does a hard bodybuilding workout actually look like? And can we break down the various portions of that to look at, okay, well, where do we see the slowdowns? Where do we see the rep drop-offs? Where do we see the value of keeping your intraset rest period the same and actually just increasing maybe the volume overall? It's a safer way of doing things. So I've tried to provide that type of education. Hopefully it's been useful, but really, if you had to break it down into one simple catchphrase, it would be to lean into the pain. Lean into the pain. Whatever you're doing, whatever repetition you're doing, whatever reps you're doing, sets and exercises, try and make it as hard as possible. And if you do that, you will apply progressive overload, because, well, you'll actually be stimulating the muscle. So assuming everything else is in check, you've got a better chance of growing. So that's good. In a sense, it's actually better for you. It's even better for progressive overload, because you've got more of a chance of growing because the muscles are actually under tension. So yeah, that is super important. And just staying consistent with everything. And if you do that, I think you can also start to make more use of the volume you are doing as well. I think that's something which is particularly in today's landscape where everyone talks about volume, volume, volume. I think that's something which is quite useful because people are really after this whole holy grail of volume. But if your training isn't actually effective, then all the volume in the world isn't going to do anything. It's just going to tire you out. So you have to make things actually effective. And if you do that, I often find the volume totals aren't generally that high. Most people can't do a lot of very hard training. And I think you should set the training intensity first and then go from there. So this was my first leg day of 2 of the week. So hack squat was 3 straight sets. Seated leg press was 2 MyRep match sets. So for quads, that I would count as a total of about 6 sets. Clearly a MyRep cluster set is not worth the same as 1 set. So I'd probably count that as 2, maybe 3. There's about 6 or 7 sets for the quads. For the hamstrings, I would count that as 4 sets. So, and for the calves, probably, yeah, looking at maybe 3 or 4 sets. So that's the workout. Hopefully you found that interesting. But yeah, as I say, for bodybuilding, lean into the pain. Make every rep within reason, as hard as possible, because oftentimes, more often than not, that is correlated with all the good things like tight intraset rest periods, full range of motion, decent proximity to failure, getting the most out of every rep, out of every inch, giggity. And that's all productive for hypertrophy. All right, folks, I'm going to call it there.